A chance encounter. Rain pounded the cracked pavement of New Harbor City, washing grime from the towering buildings into overflowing gutters. Devin Wright hunched his shoulders against the downpour, clutching his worn jacket tighter as he hurried home from another disappointing day. His small botanical research company was on the verge of bankruptcy, his funding applications rejected again, his dreams of revolutionizing urban farming fading like the setting sun behind the city's skyline. The shortcut through Meridian Alley wasn't his preferred route, especially after dark, but tonight he was too tired and wet to care. Halfway down the narrow passage, a movement caught his eye, something shifting behind a stack of discarded shipping containers. Probably just another stray cat, he thought, until he heard a sound that froze him mid-step, a whimper, distinctly sentient, yet unlike anything human. "Hello?" he called, instantly regretting breaking the city's first unwritten rule, mind your own business. No response came, but the shadows shifted again. Devin's curiosity overrode his caution. He approached slowly, phone flashlight illuminating the space between containers. What he found stole his breath. Huddled against the wall was a figure that could never pass for human, even in the city's more eclectic districts. Her skin was the palest blue, almost translucent, with faint patterns that seemed to pulse beneath the surface. Where hair should be, delicate tendrils flowed from her scalp, currently pulled tight against her head in obvious fear. Most striking were her eyes, large, entirely silver, with no visible pupils, now wide with terror as she pressed herself further into the corner. "It's okay," Devin said softly, knowing she probably couldn't understand him. "I won't hurt you." The alien's gaze darted to the alley entrance. Her body trembled, whether from fear or the cold rain, Devin couldn't tell. What was clear was her condition, the pronounced hollow of her cheeks, the painful thinness of her limbs, the way her chest heaved with each labored breath. She was starving. Dying. In that moment, Devin's own problems seemed trivial. 3 years after first contact, aliens were no longer shocking, but they certainly weren't common on Earth. Most diplomatic exchanges happened in orbit or at the heavily guarded interstellar embassy complex outside Washington. This wasn't a diplomat or trader, this was a refugee, lost and desperate. "You need help," he said, crouching to appear less threatening, extending a hand palm up like he would to a frightened animal. "Food. Shelter." The alien studied him, her silver eyes unblinking. Then, with visible effort, she raised a 6-fingered hand and touched her throat. The gesture seemed meaningful, though Devin couldn't decipher it. "Come with me," he said, miming eating and sleeping. "My apartment is close." Later, Devin would question his sanity in this moment. Bringing an unknown alien to his home broke at least a dozen interspecies contact laws enacted after first contact. But something in her eyes, a desperate intelligence, a fading hope, reached beyond the barriers of species. To his surprise, she nodded, a distinctly human gesture that suggested she understood more than he'd thought. Rising shakily, she revealed her full height, nearly a foot shorter than his 6-foot frame. Her clothes, if they could be called that, were tattered scraps of some shimmering material that barely provided coverage, let alone warmth. "Here," Devin shrugged off his jacket and held it out. After a moment's hesitation, she accepted it, wrapping it around herself with trembling hands. The walk to his apartment was tense, every passing car causing the alien to flinch. Devin took less traveled paths, grateful for the continuing rain that kept the streets relatively empty. By the time they reached his building, the alien was leaning heavily against him, her strength clearly failing. His apartment was on the 20th floor of a neglected building where the elevator worked only sporadically. Tonight, mercifully, it was operational. Inside his small one-bedroom space, with its jungle of experimental plants occupying every window and most flat surfaces, Devin finally felt they were safe. The alien stood just inside the door, silver eyes taking in everything, her body still rigid with caution. Devin moved slowly, filling a glass with water and offering it to her. She examined it, then with unexpected grace, dipped one finger into the liquid. The tip of her finger seemed to absorb the water directly, a small ripple of relief visibly passing through her body. "You can understand me, can't you?" Devon asked. After a moment, she nodded again. "Do you have a name? Something I can call you?" She touched her throat again, then made a series of soft, melodic sounds that Devon's human vocal cords could never replicate. "I'm Devon," he said, pointing to himself. "Devon Wright." The alien seemed to consider this, then pointed to herself and produced a simplified version of her earlier sounds. "Nilara," she said, her voice like wind through crystal. "Nilara," Devon repeated, smiling. "You're safe here." He prepared the only food he thought might be universally digestible, plain rice with some of his hydroponic vegetables. Offering the bowl, he watched as Nilara examined it carefully before tentatively tasting a grain of rice. Her reaction was immediate, her tendrils relaxed, flowing more loosely around her face, and the patterns beneath her skin brightened slightly. Hunger overtook caution. Nilara ate with increasing urgency, not with human implements but using those six-fingered hands with remarkable dexterity. When she finished, she looked up at Devon, and something had changed in her posture, a fractional lowering of defenses. "Rest," Devon said, gesturing to his small couch. "You're exhausted." As Nilara settled onto the couch, Devon went to his bedroom and returned with a blanket. She accepted it cautiously, wrapping it around herself with those same deliberate movements. "Tomorrow we'll figure things out," he promised, though he had no idea what "figuring things out" would entail for an alien refugee. Devon slept poorly that night, his mind racing with questions and concerns. By morning, he half expected Nilara to be gone, having fled in the night. Instead, he found her examining his plants with obvious fascination, her delicate fingers hovering just above a struggling moonflower that had refused to bloom for weeks. "Good morning," he said softly, not wanting to startle her. Nilara turned, and in daylight, Devon was struck by the changes overnight rest and food had made. Her skin was less transparent, the patterns beneath more defined in swirling symmetrical designs. Her tendrils moved with more fluidity, responding to invisible currents in the air. She gestured to the plants, then to herself, then made a flowing motion with her hands. "You know plants?" Devon guessed. Nilara nodded emphatically, then pointed to the struggling moonflower. With careful movements, she touched its stem with 3 fingers. The effect was immediate and astounding, the plant visibly straightened, its wilting leaves firming, and as Devon watched in amazement, a bud that had been dormant for weeks began to unfurl. That's incredible," he breathed. A small smile curved Nilara's lips, another surprisingly human expression. She touched her throat again, frustration briefly crossing her features. "You can't speak our language," Devon realized. "But you understand it?" Nilara nodded, then tapped her ear and made a series of gestures that Devon interpreted as her having learned from listening. Over breakfast, more rice for Nilara, coffee and toast for Devon, he began asking simple yes or no questions, establishing a rudimentary communication system. Through this painfully slow process, he learned that Nilara's species was called the Lumina, that her homeworld had suffered some catastrophic event, and that she had been a stowaway on a cargo vessel bound for Earth. "How long have you been here?" "In the city?" Devon asked, holding up fingers to indicate numbers. Nilara held up 7 fingers, then pointed to the window where weak sunlight filtered through the cityscape. 7 days. Devon was shocked. "You've been alone in these streets for a week?" Her expression answered clearly enough. Devon felt an ache in his chest at the thought of her hiding in alleys, starving, afraid, unable to communicate or seek help in a world entirely foreign to her. "You can stay here," he found himself saying. "Until we figure something out." Relief flooded Nilara's features, her silver eyes seeming to brighten. She reached across the small table and placed her hand atop his, the first time she had initiated contact. Her skin was cooler than human temperature, but not unpleasantly so, and carried a faint sensation like static electricity. Throughout that day, Devon called in sick to his failing business and focused on learning more about his unexpected guest. Communication improved as they established a crude system of gestures and drawings. Nilara was clearly intelligent, quickly adapting to their improvised language. By evening, Devon had learned that Nilara's species shared a symbiotic relationship with plant life. The patterns beneath her skin were not decorative but functional, a network that processed and stored energy from photosynthesis. The tendrils on her head were sensory organs that could detect subtle changes in air composition, light quality, and even the health of nearby plant life. "Is that why you helped my moonflower?" Devon asked, pointing to the now thriving plant that had actually produced a perfect white bloom. Nilara nodded, then placed her palm against her chest before extending it toward the plant, a gesture Devon interpreted as connection or sharing. As night fell over New Harbor City, Devon found himself sitting beside Nilara on his small balcony, watching stars emerge between breaks in the clouds. The comfortable silence between them felt significant, a bridge across the vast differences that separated their worlds. "Whatever happened," Devon said quietly, "whatever you're running from, you're not alone anymore." Nilara turned to him, silver eyes reflecting the city lights. She placed her hand over her heart, then reached out to touch Devon's chest lightly, directly over his own heart. The gesture needed no translation. In just 24 hours, his life had completely changed course. His financial troubles hadn't disappeared, his struggling business still teetered on the edge of failure, but somehow none of that seemed to matter as much. Sitting beside this remarkable being from another world, Devon felt something he hadn't experienced in years: purpose. What he didn't yet know was how dangerous this purpose would become, or how deeply their lives would intertwine in the days ahead. In the vast, indifferent cityscape below, forces were already moving, people who would see Nilara as a threat, a specimen, or an opportunity to exploit. The kindness Devon had shown would be tested in ways he couldn't imagine. But tonight, under the same stars that shone on Nilara's distant homeworld, there was only this moment of connection, the beginning of something neither human nor alien could have anticipated. Hearts across the stars. The morning light filtered through Devon's apartment windows, casting dappled shadows across Nilara as she communed with his collection of plants. Her delicate blue fingers hovered over a struggling fern, and Devon watched in wonder as the plant's withered fronds gradually unfurled, reaching toward her as if drawn by an invisible force. The patterns beneath her skin pulsed with renewed brightness, a visible manifestation of the energy exchange. "You've done more for my plants in 2 days than I've managed in months," Devon said, leaning against the doorframe with a mug of coffee. "I should be taking notes." Nilara turned, her silver eyes catching the light. She had begun to look healthier with each passing day, her previously translucent skin now a more vibrant azure, her movements more fluid. She gestured to the plants, then to the window, making a rising motion with her hands. "They need more light," Devon guessed. She shook her head, then mimicked drinking. "Water? But I've been following a strict hydration schedule." Nilara made a face that somehow transcended species barriers, clearly communicating that his schedule was inadequate. She picked up his notebook and sketched a quick diagram showing water absorption patterns that contradicted everything he'd learned in his botany studies. "How do you know this?" he asked, fascinated. She touched her tendrils, which moved independently like gentle underwater plants, then pointed to the fern. The message was clear, she could sense the plant's needs directly. Their peaceful morning was shattered by the blaring of the vid screen. An emergency broadcast interrupted regular programming, the announcer's voice tense with barely contained alarm. "Authorities are urging citizens to report any suspicious non-human activity following confirmed sightings of an unregistered alien entity in the Meridian District. The Department of Extraterrestrial Affairs stresses that unauthorized alien presence poses potential biohazard risks." The image shifted to grainy security footage from a storefront near where Devon had found Nilara. Despite the poor quality, her distinctive form was recognizable as she darted between shadows. Nilara stiffened, her tendrils pulling tight against her head in a now familiar sign of distress. Devon quickly shut off the broadcast, but the damage was done. Their brief sanctuary had just become precarious. "They don't know you're here," Devon reassured her, crossing the room to gently place his hands on her shoulders. This building has minimal security. You're safe. But even as he spoke the words, a sharp knocking came at his door. Nilara's silver eyes widened in panic. "Hide in the bedroom," Devon whispered, guiding her quickly across the apartment. "Don't make a sound." Once Nilara was safely hidden, Devon composed himself and opened the door to find his neighbor, Mr. Reitman, an elderly man whose curiosity often exceeded social boundaries. "Heard the announcement?" Reitman asked without preamble, peering past Devon into the apartment. "Building manager says they're going door to door in the district looking for that alien." "Is that right?" Devon kept his expression neutral despite his racing heart. "Government says it could be dangerous, incompatible biology and all that." Reitman lowered his voice. "But between you and me, I think they're just scared of what they don't understand. Wouldn't be the first time humans reacted that way, would it?" Devon studied the old man's face, wondering if there was some hidden meaning in his words. "No," he agreed cautiously. "It wouldn't." Reitman's gaze lingered on the unusually flourishing plants visible from the doorway. "Your green thumbs improved lately. Those plants were half dead last week when I helped you carry fertilizer up." Before Devon could respond, Reitman continued, "My daughter worked at the Interstellar Embassy before she passed. Used to tell me stories. Said some species out there have gifts we can't comprehend." He tapped his cane against the floor twice. "If someone was sheltering a visitor, for the visitor's safety, you understand, I might have some resources that could help." Understanding dawned on Devon. "Would you like to come in, Mr. Reitman?" The old man smiled, revealing surprisingly youthful eyes. "I thought you'd never ask." When Nilara cautiously emerged from hiding, Reitman showed no surprise. Instead, he addressed her with a formal gesture, hands open, palms up, head slightly bowed, that caused her tendrils to lift in evident recognition. "The Embassy Orientation Manual," Reitman explained to Devon. "Universal greeting for species with visual processing systems. Means I acknowledge her personhood without presuming familiarity." To their astonishment, Nilara responded with a series of melodic tones followed by halting words in English. "I learn, speak." "You're speaking," Devon exclaimed, moving closer. "Small words. Difficult," she managed, each syllable clearly requiring intense concentration. Reitman pulled an outdated tablet from his coat pocket. "My daughter's old translator. Not perfect, but it might help bridge the gap until her English improves." As they worked with the translator, the full scope of Nilara's situation became clearer. Her planet, Lumia, had been experiencing accelerating climate collapse. The Lumina, with their symbiotic relationship to plant life, were dying as their ecosystem failed. Some had been accepted as refugees by other worlds, but Earth's strict immigration policies had made official channels almost impossible. "Last ship," Nilara explained through the translator. "No permission. Hide. Escape pods when near Earth orbit." "You crashed?" Devon asked, horrified. "Soft landing. Water. Swim. Hide." Reitman's expression darkened. "The authorities aren't looking for her because of biohazard concerns. They're afraid of the precedent. If one unauthorized refugee successfully integrates, others will follow." "My people, dying," Nilara said, the translator rendering her musical speech into flat English that couldn't capture the grief in her silver eyes. "Need new home. Can help Earth. Plants know us." As if to demonstrate, she moved to Devon's prized experimental hybrid, a cross-species plant that had stubbornly refused to flower despite months of careful tending. Placing both hands around its stem, Nilara closed her eyes. The patterns beneath her skin brightened, pulsing in complex rhythms as energy visibly flowed between her and the plant. Before their eyes, buds formed and bloomed into flowers unlike anything Devon had ever seen, radiant, with petals that seemed almost luminous. "Remarkable," Reitman breathed. "With abilities like that, she could revolutionize agriculture, possibly even help restore damaged ecosystems. Which makes her valuable, Devon noted grimly. Too valuable. Some would exploit her rather than work with her as an equal. The tablet translated Nalara's next words with stark simplicity, not the only one. Others hidden. Afraid. There are more of you on Earth? Devon asked, stunned. Few. Scattered. Hiding. Reitman stroked his chin thoughtfully. We need a plan. Not just for Nalara, but potentially for her entire species. A safe haven, legitimate recognition. That evening, after Reitman left with promises of discreet assistance, Devon found Nalara standing on his small balcony, her face turned toward the stars. The city lights illuminated her blue skin, making the patterns beneath glow like constellations. I'm sorry, he said, joining her. About your world. Nalara turned to him, her newly practiced English still halting but improving by the hour. You saved me. When others would fear. I wasn't thinking about being brave, Devon admitted. I just saw someone who needed help. This, kindness. Not common. On my world or yours. Her hand found his, 6 fingers interlacing with 5. The contact sent a pleasant tingling sensation up his arm, like gentle electricity. I'll help you find the others, Devon promised. And together, we'll find a way for you to stay. Legally, safely. The peaceful moment was shattered by the wail of sirens on the street below. Looking down, they saw official vehicles with the Department of Extraterrestrial Affairs insignia pulling up outside the building. Someone reported you, Devon realized, pulling Nalara back inside. We need to leave. Now. They grabbed only essentials, Devon's research notes, the translator, some food, and a small pot containing a cutting from the hybrid plant Nalara had helped bloom. As they were about to exit through the service stairs, a loud pounding came at the door. Department of Extraterrestrial Affairs. Open up. Nalara's tendrils flattened against her head in terror, but Devon squeezed her hand reassuringly. This way, he whispered, leading her to the maintenance shaft he discovered years ago when the building's elevator had been out of order for months. The narrow passage was dusty and dark, but it led them down to the building's subbasement and out through an emergency exit that deposited them in an alley behind the structure. Rain had started falling again, providing welcome cover as they hurried away from the building, keeping to shadows and side streets. Reitman, Devon said suddenly. We need to reach him. He might be our only ally now. They made their way across the city, avoiding main thoroughfares where surveillance was heaviest. Twice they narrowly evaded patrols, once by ducking into an abandoned storefront, another time by blending with late-night revelers leaving a club. When they finally reached Reitman's small house on the outskirts of the city, they found him waiting, as if he'd expected their arrival. They're searching your apartment now, he informed them, ushering them inside. I have friends watching the department channels. They know about Nalara specifically now, someone gave them a detailed description. Why are they so determined? Devon asked, helping Nalara into a chair. The journey had clearly taxed her limited strength. It's not just about one refugee anymore, Reitman said gravely. Look. He activated his vid screen, where breaking news showed footage of unusual plant growth throughout the Meridian district, accelerated, almost intelligent spread of greenery along building faces, through cracks in pavement, transforming a normally gray urban landscape into something vibrant and alive. Happens, when we stay, in one place, Nalara explained tiredly. Plants respond, grow stronger. Cannot help it. The ecosystem recognizes you, Devon realized. It's trying to adapt to support you. And that terrifies the authorities, Reitman added. Uncontrolled biological change, however beneficial, threatens their sense of control. A sudden pounding at the door made them all freeze. Reitman motioned them toward the back of the house. Go. My cellar, there's a tunnel that leads to the old subway system. My daughter used it to transport asylum seekers to the embassy years ago. Come with us, Devon urged. The old man shook his head. I'll stall them, give you time. The access code is my daughter's birthday, August 17, 39. Go. As they descended into the cellar, Devon heard Reitman greeting the authorities with convincing irritation at being disturbed so late. The tunnel was narrow and damp, but well maintained. They moved quickly through the darkness, guided by the soft glow emanating from Nallara's skin patterns. Others, like me, in tunnels, Nallara whispered as they walked. Sense them. Not far. Other lumina. Here. Devon was astonished. Yes. Feel there. Energy. Plants grow even here. She pointed to small, pale shoots emerging from cracks in the tunnel walls, plants that shouldn't be able to grow without light. They continued deeper into the tunnel system, guided by Nallara's increasing certainty. After nearly an hour of walking, they began to notice changes in their surroundings. The air grew warmer, less stale. Strange, luminescent fungi lined the walls, providing soft light. Plant life became more abundant, not just struggling shoots but thriving vines and ferns unlike any terrestrial species Devon recognized. Finally, they turned a corner and entered a vast underground chamber that took Devon's breath away. The ceiling rose at least 30 feet, somehow incorporating patches of real sunlight through cleverly disguised light wells. The entire space was filled with lush vegetation, a hidden forest beneath the city. And among the plants moved figures with blue skin and flowing tendrils, at least a dozen lumina of varying heights and ages. At their appearance, activity ceased. Silver eyes turned toward them, tendrils lifting in recognition or alarm. One lumina stepped forward, taller than Nallara with deeper blue skin marked by more complex patterns. You brought human, the translator rendered their musical speech. He saved me, Nallara responded in her native tongue, the translator working in reverse now. He is trust. The leader studied Devon intently before addressing him directly in surprisingly fluent English. I am Talon, elder of this small colony. Why do you help one of us, human, when your kind hunts us? Not all humans fear what's different, Devon replied steadily. Some of us recognize the value of connection across boundaries. Nallara has shown me that your people have gifts that could help heal our world's damaged ecosystems. We should be working together, not hiding from each other. Talon's tendrils moved in complex patterns that the translator couldn't interpret. Pretty words. But your authorities seek us for study, for control. Then we change that, Devon said with sudden conviction. Not by hiding, but by showing what's possible when we cooperate. He reached into his bag and carefully withdrew the potted cutting from his hybrid plant, now visibly growing, its stems extending even as they watched. Nallara helped this plant thrive when all my scientific knowledge failed. Imagine what your people could teach us about restoration, about healing environments we've damaged. And in return, Earth could offer your refugees a home. Talon approached, examining the plant with evident interest. You propose alliance where your leaders see threat. Sometimes change has to start small, Devon replied. With individuals choosing connection over fear. As they spoke, Nallara moved to Devon's side, her hand finding his again. The gesture wasn't lost on Talon, whose silver eyes widened slightly. The bond you share, the elder observed. It goes beyond alliance. Devon glanced at Nallara, seeing in her alien features something that had become precious to him in the span of just a few days. Yes, he acknowledged simply. Such bonds are rare enough between those of same species, Talon noted. Between different worlds, almost unheard of. Maybe that's exactly what both our peoples need, Devon suggested. Proof that connection is possible, that differences can become strengths rather than barriers. Talon was silent for a long moment, tendrils moving in contemplation. Finally, the elder spoke. You have sheltered one of our own at great personal risk. This earns you the right to propose your plan. Tell us, Devon Wright, how would you bridge these worlds? As Devon began outlining his vision for cooperation between humans and Lumina, Nilara's patterns brightened beside him, her tendrils flowing with new energy. Around them, the hidden garden seemed to respond, flowers turning toward them as if listening, vines stretching as if reaching for connection. The path ahead would not be easy. There would be resistance, danger, setbacks. But in this moment, beneath a city that didn't yet know what miracle was growing in its forgotten places, something new had taken root, a relationship that transcended species, a love that offered hope for two worlds in need of healing. In giving kindness to a starving alien girl, Devon had received something beyond measure, not just her heart, but the promise of a future where differences became bridges rather than walls. And in this underground garden, surrounded by the impossible beauty of alien plants growing in Earth's soil, that future suddenly seemed not just possible, but inevitable.